Hey guys, Unicorn Trader here. I'm gonna put together a short little video for some people. Well, just for anyone that's plays Spec Biopharmaceuticals or is trying to trade biopharmaceuticals. More of the speculative kind, not like necessarily Amgen or Valiant or something like that, but mainly the speculative biopharmaceutical, a few simple one or two drugs in the pipeline, that sort of thing, and the general pattern here, because I see a lot of confusion, a lot of tweets and stuff like that from people that they don't understand how these work. They feel that they work like regular stocks, and they don't work like regular stocks by any means. They have their own pattern, they have their own methodology, and it's not because the stocks are different. It's because the companies behind the stocks are different and they operate differently. It's like betting on a dog in a horse race. Dogs run differently than horses. So it's or a motorcycle in a car race. You know what I mean? They're just different and they operate differently. And so this is I'm just going to use an example of a company that I played and was successful on, and it followed the pattern pretty dang closely. Now, these notation marks are nowhere near exactly accurate to the dates when these, catalysts, or shall we say decatalysts, happened. But the pattern is the same. The pattern is similar. The pattern going through is similar. Not the chart pattern is not 100% the same on each one, because different stocks react differently to the news or catalysts and suppressive forces or news. But the general trend of what happens, and if we take a look, this is Tesaro, and I started playing this somewhere after their around their phase 2 data, phase 1 data. I was trading it somewhere in the 30s. But this is the overall view of the whole deal. I just turned it into a monster stock. But I'm going to shrink it down here so you can see kind of like what the pattern is. Actually, we'll just do an overall view real quick. And these almost always follow, and there's a couple caveats to it. But first, you'll have now I'm not. I think preclinical data could have happened here. Anytime you see that first little bump, usually it's some preclinical data that shows some positive prospectus. You'll get a little bump off that. Usually after that preclinical data, you're going to get a stock offer, which is going to detract the price of the stock, because they're trying to raise capital, and I have had other videos that show that. They're trying to raise capital. They have to raise capital. Even though the stock is trading in the hundreds and 50s right now, they still are capital desperate, essentially. So when they're trading down here and they're just barely listed on the NASDAQ, they're really cash starved usually. So you'll get a little bump off of preclinical data, and then everybody thinks, oh, this is getting bought out. It's amazing. I can show you SPHS where the people were literally saying, or EBIO, where people were literally saying it's getting bought out off the preclinical data or the phase 1 data. Ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. Very few have ever had that happen. But anyways, usually you get this pattern. Traders, we need to go with highest probability. The highest probability is not getting bought out after preclinical data or phase 1. Anyways, so you're gonna get preclinical data. You're gonna get a bump off that. You're gonna get a stock offering right after that. Somewhere in there, you might get another stock offering. Anytime you see these giant drops in price, and that's a giant drop, going from like 40 to 30 overnight, but you'll see these giant drops based on news or usually offerings, or total market issues, because at this point the stock's not that strong. 200 daily moving average just started right there. So you got a stock offering somewhere in here. after 6 months or whatever, depending on their phase, that's important to know what their phase length is. After preclinical, they'll do their clinical trial. They'll have phase 1 data. Usually after phase 1 data comes out, you might get another stock offering in here. Maybe. Then there's a period of blah, blah. There's going to be a build into phase 2 data because people know kind of when the phase data is going to come out, so people start betting. Half of those people lose on half their stocks, and half of them win on half their stocks. They win half of it. You're betting at that point. Phase 2 data comes out, you get a big skyrocket because it's good, or you get a big tank because it's bad. But if it's good, you're going to get a stock offering. This is the period where everybody's like, it's amazing, it's so good, and then they get axed, which is in my other video. They think, oh, this thing's run 30% off this phase data. You're dumb, because the offering is coming. Offering comes, slams the price down. They need that cash. They start doing clinical for phase 3. At some point, they're going to do an NDA submission with phase 3 data. The phase 3 data is good, and usually if the phase 3 data is good and they do an NDA submission, we're going to get a resting period. This drop off here was definitely off of an overall market downturn. At this point, you have these resting periods. You essentially have these resting periods where the price of the stock is going to get manipulated by the total market. There's no news coming out. Coming into where people think news is going to come out, the price may move up. But when it's in the high periods are right after the phase data's come out. Actually your preclinical data could have come out through here because this move through there could have been that. But the point being is that after these moves, you're generally going to get a drop off because of trying to raise capital. At some point, this downturn would not have happened if it wasn't for the total market falling to crap there. But you can essentially feel this would have traded flat quietly, and then boom, you had approval by the FDA. I sold out like right here, which I should have held on to it. But after phase data, usually a lot of times they'll do another stock offering. This thing was just a rocket launcher, unpredictable. I did end up buying back in. But you get that FDA approval. A lot of times after the FDA approval, you're going to get a stock offering, and I believe there was a stock offering somewhere around here because they need to raise capital in order to market this thing. They got to hire salespeople now because they don't hire salespeople before they have a drug. They got to hire salespeople. They got to call bunches of doctors. They got to set up a website to try to get new patients to get discounted drugs for their first prescriptions, and you usually don't see a giant rip. This is a huge rip on like you don't usually see a giant rip because there's all this period of time where I call it right here the rollout period. There's like a rollout period of several months where it's got to be they got to have sales. The drugs are being manufactured. They got to go out and pitch to doctors to get doctors to prescribe this stuff. Then they got to see what the prescription numbers are coming back. The first 30 days or 60 days, usually the first 30 days are free to patients. So there's like this dead period where they're not going to make any money even though their RXs are going up. And a lot of times when those RX numbers come out, you'll see a tank off because they're like, oh, it's not as good. They only have 200 prescriptions last month. We expected 300. So there's all this speculation that goes on to whether the ramp time on their drug, their RXs it's fast enough. Okay? And then, so the sales data and RXs, right? And then, of course, you have the buyout speculation. You have all these people coming in here like, that's worth so much money, it's going to be bought out, which is exactly where the stock is right now. I actually reloaded back up right here. No, actually, you know what? I sold this. I sold this out. Just because, well, this one's weird because Clovis might have some. I actually sold this on this pop day here, just to close out my entire position because it's in a very dangerous spot at the moment, based on Clovis's release. But we're not talking about this stock. I'm not pointing out this stock. This is the pattern. This is the pattern. You know, and depending on where you're at, it's the phase. You got preclinical, phase 1, 1A, B. You got phase 2, A, B. Then you get phase 3. Then you're gonna have to, after phase 3 data comes out, you're gonna have the NDA submission. They might have a meeting with the FDA. And that meeting with the FDA is gonna create some movement in the stock price. And then they submit. It's gonna go up. Once they submit, that's usually when the price levels out, because it's like, okay, it's submitted. People have basically, the stock's going to equalize where people are betting. People are betting like, okay, my risk is this much upside, my risk is this much downside, and the stock kind of equalizes on that. People that feel like that's not going to, the stock basically kind of like finds a spot. It doesn't necessarily mean it's right, but it kind of just can be kind of, the pressure builds and creates an equilibrium essentially. And then that equilibrium either creates a lot of money for some people or makes people lose a lot of money. So, but the pattern, if you were in a Spec Biopharmaceutical stock, know that the pattern dates are preclinical, phases 1, 2, 3, NDA submission. If you submit and the FDA submits a complete response letter, a CRL, the stock is going to get hit 30%, 20% at a minimum. It does not necessarily mean it's going to stay down. Usually, that's usually when you can make the most money, because they do a CRL for like something stupid, and that doesn't actually have anything to do with the drug. Manufacturing issues is like the best. Then you load up because if you think the drug is good. But usually these milestones that move the stock up generally are followed by stock offerings. That is number one rule. Milestones that move the stock up are usually followed by stock offerings because they're cash-starved companies. Milestone periods can be determined by looking at the site or the FDA.gov's clinical trial site, because they basically lay out the trial design for each trial. It's laid out there, so you can kind of see what the time frames are, because everyone's a little different. Some might be a 6 month. Then you need to know, did they get orphan drug status? Did they get priority review status? What status was given by the FDA, and was it given by the FDA, or did they use a coupon to get that priority status? Because priority status is 6 months versus 10-month review. And usually if the FDA is, well, I'm not going to get into all that, but usually there's ways that there's some there's a lot of nuances to this, but the key is to know when the data sets hit. If they're good, don't buy the hype. Play the hype and then get out. I'm going to give you a good example that kind of prompted me. Some of the tweets on this prompted me to do this. Is a UPH, really big spiky moves on their data and the preclinical and offerings and things like that. The general pattern is the same though. Anytime you have these massive run-ups, you're gonna have drop-offs, because they either do an offering or somebody shorts the snot out of it because the stock doesn't have enough strength to hold up yet. A price isn't basically established, so shorts are able to drive it down, and that's just the way it is. If there was a good price established and bulls wanted to buy, the shorts wouldn't be able to drive it down. So don't be mad at bears. But you have this massive spike here. Everybody is like, this is it. I'm going to be a millionaire. And then of course I warned everybody, and they did it for a stock offering and just tanked it all the way off. It was classic. It's part of the pattern. People don't know the pattern get burnt. And the pattern was that they did a stock offering after hours. They had an offering pay. Institutions bought it between these areas here, which created basically kind of a little support area here, which is a little strange. Usually, you get a massive move off this thing and a stock offering, which sets it right here. Well, everybody's saying that it's going to hold up and this thing's going to go through the roof, but what do you know? It fell through the offering price. And now it's kind of consolidated. I am not gonna technical analyze this chart at the moment, but my point is that yeah, there's my dollar sign. There's your offering. It's coming. Boom! It happened. But my point being is that when you have these phase data, you're gonna get a sell off, and based on where it is in the process, phase 1, 2, 3, clinical, preclinical, and then submission, complete response letters or whatever, things like that. There is a very specific pattern, and the pattern is whenever there is not a catalyst, the stock sells off, finds a base level. If the stock is doing good, usually the base levels are higher. When it sells off and it finds a base level, it sells off and finds a base level, it sells off and finds a base level, and it sells off and it finds a base level. Usually the base levels are higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Hopefully. And so it's like jumping hurdles. Every phase that comes through, they jump a new hurdle, and it drives the price up. The price is not going to keep going, and it's not going to really keep going until they get into actually having FDA approval, and that's usually like phase 3 is when you really want to get involved, because the prices and values of things have kind of been established. You have the data to look at, and you're less likely to get axed by an offering. You can look at ICPT, ICPT. Again, this one's followed a little bit different pattern, but they did an offering for $400. They wanted $400. So $400 million. They did an offering which tanked the stock price off like crazy, but they wanted it to ramp their sales, to get this in the market. And right now they're in that period of time where the earnings come out and people are like, well, they don't have enough. They're in that phase where they are doing their prescription, and sales numbers, and basically seeing what happens. So, but if you had gone back, I mean, this stock was crazy. When they posted, boom, it was crazy. That's crazy phase data. You don't normally see a 500% move overnight in a stock. This one went ballistic. So, but and you can see in SPHS. Again, classic example. Sorry, come on now. Move this out of the way. But so you got my phase data line right here. Phase data sometime right there. So I know when it's coming. Phase 3 trial starts, blah blah blah. I know the phase trial length. I got my guesstimation, and what's going on with the stock? What's going on? It's flatline. But I can assure you that sometime around this period, it is not going to be flatline. It's either going to drop off or it's going to go through the roof. It will go through the roof, or it will flatline. Well, not flatline. It will tank. But you're in this period where you're in this blank period right now where little blips of news will move this 10%, but you're not really seeing much interest yet on the stock. But you will when it comes closer to the end of 2017. And in the same situation, you can see it clearly on this. Clearly. You get news. I don't even need to look at the dates here. I know what happened. You get news. You get a stock offering that tanks it off. You get preclinical data. Or I think this was preclinical and this was phase 1 or 2 data on there. Maybe that was preclinical. I don't know. I have to go back and look. But you can rest assured that anytime there's a massive spike in the stock, it's off of phase data. Or, I mean, in Spec Biopharm Stock, they only got 1 drug in the pipeline or 2 drugs in the pipeline. Those moves are off of data. And those moves, usually, they did do an offering right after that move. Which I called it. I warned a lot of people on that, saying they're going to get bought out. It's going to get bought out. Please message me if you were one of those fools that held it. But, and then you get a dry out period. They start the phase 3 trial. Usually phase 3 creates some upward momentum. This thing hasn't moved any. There's no momentum here, which is strange because their data seems to be pretty dang good. So we'll see what happens. But it's following exactly the same pattern. The drop off the offerings, you get spikes on phase data if it's good. But you don't get a buyout, and you don't get people. This thing doesn't run forever. It does not get run. What's your price target? My price target is nothing until they actually have something they can sell on the market. You know, so that's pretty much it. That's just how I look at it. So hopefully that helps clarify some of the pattern. They do not follow regular price stocks or regular, NASDAQ and blue chip stocks. So good luck, guys. I'm a novice, just my opinion.